So Ohio State's lost its fourth member of its 2024 roster to the transfer portal. I'm Stephen Means, and that's Andrew Gillis, and this is another YouTube version of Buckeye Talk. This time it's Devin Brown, the former top 100 recruit in the 2022 class, who back then was the replacement for Quinn Ewers when he reclassified from 2022 and showed up basically a week in the fall camp in 2021 to be a part of that roster. Now Quinn Ewers now the starter at Texas in his third year there. Devin Brown, two different quarterback battles since he's been here, right? He lost out to Kyle McCord in 2023, and though Ryan Day had said that there was a point in that battle where he thought that Devin Brown would win that battle, even pushed it into the first couple of games of the season, Andrew, but ultimately loses out to Kyle McCord, gets his shot in the Cotton Bowl, gets hurt in the Cotton Bowl, and so Ohio State brings in Will Howard, who essentially wins the battle in 2024, and Devin Brown is once again the backup. Though he did have some moments. He threw a touchdown pass against Michigan State as well. So there's a world here where I don't know if Devin Brown doesn't get hurt in the Cotton Bowl, could he have done what we saw Miller Moss do in their bowl game a year ago that won him a job? And I'm not saying throw 5 touchdown passes, but there is a world that exists where maybe if Devin Brown doesn't get hurt and he shows out in the Cotton Bowl, Will Howard doesn't exist in this variable.
Yeah, it's a lot to try and take in, right? We were watching the Cotton Bowl, and I just remember seeing Devin Brown go down and going, well, first off, that stinks for Devin Brown. That was kind of his opportunity. And, maybe things happen the same way. Maybe Ohio State brings in Will Howard, but maybe Devin Brown plays well enough in that game to where some team says, we need you to be our starting quarterback right now. And, there's just a million different things. And, you don't want to put anybody in the transfer portal as a reporter. You don't want to say, oh, this guy's definitely going to leave unless you're actually reporting any information. But you did start to kind of have that hunch of, okay, he lost to Kyle McCord in 2023, lost to Will Howard in 2024. Yes, you probably think you can play. Yes, you want to hang around. Yes, you want to be that guy, but you also need to think about your career and you also want to be smart about it. And I think Devin Brown's handled things the right way. He didn't really mope and complain about losing the Kyle McCord job. Didn't really mope and complain about losing the Will Howard job. Will Howard and Kyle McCord talked about how good of a relationship they had with him. It wasn't adversarial or anything like that. So you've just got a quarterback who is making the right decision for him. And you kind of commend him for that because I think he gave it everything he had at Ohio State. He gave it the 2 chances. Now he's entering the portal. And this was kind of a move that I think as we looked at spring practice and we saw Julian Sayin throw a football, I think this was kind of something that we started to say, okay, well, I think we have a pretty good idea here of what's going on because Julian Sayin is really, really talented. And we can have that conversation now and in a couple of months as we get into the 2025 season. But, I think this was probably the most predictable move of the quarterback transfers. Ohio State has 5 on their roster. They're bringing in Tavian St. Clair as part of the 2025 recruiting class, 5-star quarterback. You figured that at some point, one of these guys was going to leave, and it happens to be Devin Brown. We get that news on Sunday night. So Devin Brown is going to go into the portal, and I think this was one of maybe 2. We'll see if there's another one. I think this was kind of expected. You're muted.
As you said, a lot of respect to Devin Brown. A lot of respect. A guy who, again, he flipped from USC late in that 2022 cycle to come to Ohio State in a room that was at the time already loaded with C.J. Stroud, Kyle McCord, Quinn Ewers, and Jack Miller were all still on the roster at that point. When he got here, C.J. Stroud was the returning starting quarterback, and Kyle McCord was the clear-cut backup quarterback in 2022. And then when he loses to Kyle McCord, he sticks around anyway, sticks through that entire season. And then I think, Andrew, when they went and got Will Howard and then Julian Sayin decided to leave Alabama after Nick Saban's retirement, when we were looking at that room and going, man, there's 5 guys in the room, they're not going to make it to fall camp with 5, he was at the top of the list of people that we thought wasn't going to be here. And every single time we would go to him with these questions on why are you still here? How come you haven't transferred in this world where quarterbacks are transferring all the time? Why are you still here? He would look at us and be like, hey, what are you talking about? burn the boats, man. He literally put the burn the boats artwork up there, right? He stuck it out. And so should he have left earlier? Could he have left earlier? Sure. You can make the argument for both of those, could and should. But the point of the matter is he stuck around for 3 years, put up the best fight he could possibly put up in 2 different quarterback battles. And so after that, you do have to ask yourself, in a world where it feels like Julian Sand is starting to gain steam as the guy we all think is the favorite to win the job in 2025, it's one thing to be losing the job to people who are older than you. It's another thing to be losing the job to a guy who's younger than you with 3 years of eligibility remaining out to it. And really 4 years, because Julian Sands only played, I believe, 2 or 3 games. So he's going to redshirt this year. At some point, you have to put aside your I want to fight, I want to fight, I want to fight, and look at it as I put up the best fight I could put up. And I have 3 years of developing at one of the best places in the country to develop as a quarterback. I need to go get on the field now. And there's plenty of teams in the Big 10 and the Big 12 and the SEC and the AC all over the country who would love to take the guy who spent the last 2 years being Ohio State's backup quarterback. I don't think he's going to have a lack of options wherever he goes. But I just think that's important to move this question forward. But what does this do in terms of the 2025 battle? We maybe believed that Julian Sand was the foregone favorite in the situation, but now it's a room where Julian Sand has very quickly gone from I'm a true freshman to being QB3. I don't know. Is there anything that leads you to believe that that's not going to be true, that he's not going to be the guy who's the starter when Ohio State takes the field against Texas next year?
No, I think this is the move that is the signifier of we have a starting quarterback in 2025, and I think it's going to be Julian Sand. You're going to have Julian Sand, you're going to have Lincoln Keenholz, you're going to have Tavian St. Clair, and you're going to have Aaron Nolan. That's the room. And yes, there are other moves that can happen. Yes, you do have other transfer options. You mentioned it. Devin Brown is a 3-year quarterback at Ohio State. He's leaving with 2 years of eligibility. And there are a lot of programs that can use that talent. And there are a lot of programs that could use the talent that Ohio State has in its quarterback room. A lot of programs would love an Aaron Noland or a Lincoln Keenholz or Julian Sand and Tavian St. Clair, a little bit different, but a lot of programs would love those guys. So that's where the room is at. And I do think it does clear the path for Julian Sand, because Julian Sand, I think, elevated himself quicker than Aaron Noland in this last couple of months, right? We saw it in spring practice, like I said, with Julian. Julian was QB3. And if you just go by that logic, quarterback 1's going to be gone in the NFL and quarterback 2 is going to be playing for another school. Julian Sand, you're up. And I think Ohio State's okay with that. And I think Ohio State probably planned for this and probably planned that this was going to happen. So I think that this pretty well clears the door for Julian Sand. And now the question is, who's going to be his backup and who's going to be kind of in that mix of, okay, is it Lincoln Keenholz? Does Tavian St. Clair come here and ball out and look really good? Does Aaron Nolan make that run? And then all of a sudden it's Sayin and Nolan. You have the 224 kids as your 1 and 2. There's just so many things that can happen with the portal. But the most important thing that Ohio State fans need to take from this news, by the way, Devin Brown staying with the team through the college football playoff. So, if, something were to happen to Will Howard, Devin Brown theoretically would be the guy that they would go to. But going into 25, it's Sayin and then some question marks. And I think when you play Texas, you're going to have a 5-star quarterback at the helm for Ohio State.
And again, just because we're going to be getting these questions in the text, 614-350-3315, if we draw 399 after that. Ryan Day got asked about that on Sunday, the idea of guys who are entering the transfer portal but did have roles for you this year. Are they still going to be available? Day said a lot of those conversations are still actively ongoing. That was asked when talking about Gabe Powers, who had already announced his decision to do so earlier in the week before the portal opened. The portal will officially be opened at 12:01 Monday morning. Devin Brown can still be on the sideline and be a part of this team as they try to go through a championship run. Now, granted, you got 3 weeks, so who knows if Julian Sand has cemented himself as the QB2 in this situation. We don't know that information. But Devin Brown can stick around for the rest of this season and be a part of things. And we could see a situation, if he does that, it could be similar to what we saw against Michigan State and Michigan, Andrew, where if something happens to Will Howard, we do see Devin Brown come into the game. That is the difference here. There is a rule in place that players who are playing on teams in college football, who play in college football playoff games, there's 5 days after their last game where they can still go into the portal. So it's not as simple as, oh, my team is going to try to win a national championship and you're leaving to go find a worse. No. It's not their fault that the NCAA has no backbone and has everything that's important about its sport happening at the exact same time. The players have to both do what's best for them while also continue to be a good teammate. I would expect a guy who has stuck it out for 3 years to continue to do that. And if he doesn't, he has every right, because he's had 3 years of fighting to get onto the field, and now it's time for him to go find a way to get onto the field, even if it's not in the Columbus. Get the text 614-350-3315. Ohio State does lose a quarterback to the transfer portal in Devin Brown, so that's at least 2 guys from its 2024 roster who will not be back with Will Howard out of eligibility this season. That's Andrew. I'm Steven, and this was a YouTube version of Buckeye Talk.